Hey there everyone, this video is going to be about guild raids, and in this one specifically I'm going to be going through the Archer class, but you know that already because you just clicked on this video. This is something which I've spent quite a lot of time investigating now. I put it off for a very long time, and it's taken me roughly 30 hours investigating everything, so I now know almost everything there is to know about guild raids, and there's a lot of information to really talk about. This video is going to be more instructional, giving tips. There'll be a little bit of a showcase, and it's going to be more of a lesson than anything else. I'm going to try and get all the information across in this video. However, because there's a fair bit. Actually, archery is a little bit simpler, but even so, I'm going to go through some of the more important details first. Then I'm going to show the run, and then I'm going to go into some of the extra details afterwards. For anyone who really wants to see like I have really done this properly, and to do a bit of twiddling around with the numbers themselves. Fiddling around is what I mean. Okay, so we are going to dip into my notes, and we're doing the Archer one, so let's open this up. So, first things to sort of note, there are a few things to do with the skill points arrangement, that basically, most skills you want to have at 10 out of 99, there's not really much benefit there. Barbed arrows, you'll see later on, you get a small benefit from getting it to 99 out of 99, but for general use, it uses so much mana that you don't want to do this. So, you can get up to 99 if you want a tiny boost for guild raid, but you only do it for guild raid. Concussive arrow is similar as well. You don't really want to do it for elsewhere, but it gives you a slight boost if you are using it at all, which is we'll get into later. Pet skills. Now, these don't scale with the boss difficulty. I'll just do take a look at the pet skills first very quickly. So basically, the ballista, all types of ballista, they do quite a small amount of damage per hit. And it actually works out as like 13.5 million. Now, they don't change with your elemental stats. They don't change with the boss difficulty either. So actually, it's a very small amount of damage. You don't want to use the pet skills. I only tested Ballista, actually. I didn't bother with Falconer. But yeah, Ballista, it just doesn't do that much damage. You only want to use it in specific situations. So that's that kind of stuff covered. One extra technique with Archer, which I have to go through first, is double stacking the sniper runes. So if you look up here in the top left, when I put this buff on, you'll see that there's the sniper buff there. Now that lasts for 30 seconds, and if you click the skill again, it won't reapply that buff. It will only reapply it if it's come off. So you need to time when you use it for when it ends, so that then you can reapply the skill. You don't want to just be spamming this, because then as the 30 second finishes, the buff comes off, and this may not be off cooldown. However, you can stack the Skurun effects. So the Skurun effect that I'm using at the moment, Empowered Blasting Shot, it gives a chance for an explosion on each of your basic attacks. It's a very low chance, and so by double stacking this, it increases the chance and makes it a lot more reliable, which you'll see in the run, which I'm going to be doing very shortly. Now, because of the cooldown on it is 13 seconds, it lasts 30 seconds. Basically, you can use this twice, and then after the second use, you then wait on the third use. So you can see here, I've used it once. The buff's there. When this comes off cooldown, I can use it immediately. Now, when it comes off cooldown the next time, the buff's actually going to end in a few seconds. So I want to wait a few seconds. I look in the top left. When I see this icon disappear, you can see the cooldown's coming off. I could use it right now. However, the buff's still on. I wait a few seconds, and then when it goes, then I can reapply and I get the buff. So that way you can keep the sniper buff constantly, and you can have the Skurun effect twice over. That's very important for dealing with the ghosts in this specific raid. In other raids, they may set it up differently. But anyway, that's double stacking. You can only do it with with the sniper. You can't do it with Pierce anymore. But that's very useful to do when you're trying to get the most damage output possible and deal with the other enemies. Now, the next thing to talk about before we get into the run, the last thing actually, is resistances. So resistances, the way they work in most places, if you don't know about resistances, go read my Stats Explained guide on the forum. But in Guild Raid, they're slightly different. So basically, the caps are lower. So normally your crit chance would be capped at 80%. Here it's 50%. And then crit damage rating, that's 8.5. Attack speed, 6. They're all slightly lower here. Now, the difference is you still have to get a certain amount above. So normally with crit damage rating, say the resistance is 1,800, so that minuses off your stat. You'd need 700 over, so 2,500, and then you'd have the maximum of 8.5 times. So the 700 there is plussing 7 times more. Here it only pluses 5 times more, however you still need that plus 700. It's not plus 500 instead. So anyway, those are the resistances there. Now the extra thing here is that you've also got a damage cap. So you don't have this in normal content, but you do in this. You have the damage cap of just 20,000. This is Silver Raid, by the way, if you didn't notice. So you have a damage cap of 20,000. When you get to the higher raids, the tougher raids, it's 30,000. Bear in mind, this is for the current raid. In later raids, when the bosses are tougher and stuff, these caps will be higher, these resistances will be higher. This is just to kind of give you an idea of how it works in theory. Don't listen to these numbers specifically, because they will be different later on. But as you can see, a bit higher here in Platinum Raid, if I can find it, the damage cap, 40,000, and these resistances are higher as well. So with my current setup, I have got enough stats to have over the limit. So I've got the maximum crit chance, attack speed, all that stuff. I've also got 412% fire and 108% water. So that's what I'm going to be showing here. This is my skill point arrangement. Oh, actually, I forgot to mention, sorry, you want 99 in volley too. This doesn't work out as worth using, which I'll get into after I've done the run. But anyway, so I've got 99 in these just because they help a little bit. But otherwise, you just want 10 and a few points. You only need to use 6 skills. So it's basically the basic attack buffs that you use. And yeah, we'll get into them later. So I'm just going to go in and do the run. And then after the run, I will talk about some more of the details. So going into this run, you want to make sure that you've got these potions active. You know, damage, cooldown, mana. You need those in order to be doing good damage. So you put on the Scorching Arrows. You don't need to click that later on. So now I'm waiting so I can do a second stack of this. I want to do Pierce just as well. I'll keep clicking Pierce as soon as that comes off. Now you mark the boss. Note exactly where I'm standing. I have this specific position. I stand here every single time, and it's kind of for the maximum distance. Reliably gets in that attack. Now I'm waiting. I'm going to look in the top left for Sniper. Reapply it now. Now I know for the rest of the match, it's only that one time you have to wait. I can now do it as soon as it comes off cooldown for the rest of it. So the other skills, you just use them as they come off cooldown. Concussive Arrow, I guess I'll talk about afterwards, just to show the end of this run. Sorry. So actually pretty safe. The enemies aren't hurting me, but if they do start hurting you, then you have to use Concussive Arrow. That's the idea. And then when it says 2 seconds to go, I use a quick volley, and that gets a load of damage in right at the end there. So it should be about 1.3. Okay, 1.3 billion. Sorry, I can't remember the exact number. We're going to look at that just now, really. So that was how you do the run. As you can see, I was doing the double stacking. I was focusing solely on basic attacks. In this particular raid, the way it works is you got those ghosts, and they go to the boss. When they get to the boss, they then explode and deal damage. Now, because I was like the maximum distance away from the boss, it actually turns out that the enemies which explode the other side, they don't reach you with the explosion. So it's only the ones on the near side which were hurting me. However, lots of them were dying to the Empowered Blasting Shot explosions, which is why it's very important in this to double stack that. And then also Pierce, is killing some of them. So actually, I'm killing off quite a few of them like that, but if they did stack up and they weren't being killed off by my skills, then I've got Infinite Combustion there, which you probably won't see on this. Yeah, it's just going to destroy it. But basically, it makes the target which you hit explode once per second and deal some fire damage around it. Now, it turns out if you've got enough fire stat, so 400% is enough. When I was testing with 200% fire, it wasn't quite enough to be killing those ghosts that were coming in. But yeah, this is this specific raid. In future raids, they may have a slightly different setup, and just bear in mind that you've got Infinite Combustion as a way to kind of take them out with that air effect damage. You've also got any ballista with a skill rune that makes it air of effect with the hits. That is, that it hits a little area rather than an individual enemy. That's great for clearing out groups as well. But it lowers your damage if you're using that skill a lot, as well as Infinite Combustion. So you want to focus on basic attacks as much as you can. And like you saw, I didn't have to use this at all. Right, so now we're going to go into some of the more details. I'll talk about a couple of the more important ones first. First of all, consumables. I tried these out, and for some reason they just didn't really help out at all. They barely affected the damage at all. So Chaos Fruit was the one I tried out, because that's the one I have, and it just didn't really do anything. It should have increased my damage, my attack speed, and that kind of stuff, but it didn't affect the damage. Archer damage is actually very reliable, so I could see any changes in it. Now, dragons, for Archer, very annoyingly, they trigger an instant death randomly. I think it's pretty much if a dragon kills one of the ghosts, it doesn't count as it being dead, so then it explodes next to the boss and it will kill you. That's this specific raid again. On later raids, hopefully this isn't a problem, but it's been a problem for all archers on this one. So on other classes, this is where the dragons work. Most of them give about plus 50 million. That's where their current stats. If they have any buffs to their stats, that'll be more. Aurelian and Celestial. These are my two favourite ones because they boost your character damage. So they literally increase the damage output you do by a lot. Unfortunately, again, you can't use them on Archer on this specific raid, but they were the ones which I would turn to. So that's Dragons and Consumables. Now to go a little bit more into the skills and why I went for this skill setup and everything. So the skill runes specifically, I just basically went for the strongest ones. Most archers have a fire build, which is why I've gone with a fire build here. Piercing Eyes, there's no fire rune for this, so that was kind of the next best option. And then Empowered Rapid Fire. Now, a lot of people will be wondering why I wasn't using this. If you look at any stage, this is me breaking down the damage you do with the different things. I'm not going to go through it in full detail. This stuff is like without buffs. So like, for example, Mark of Ignition, this is literally how much the rune is adding on to the overall damage output. Same for these, like it's about the runes, how much the rune is adding. So anyway, I'm not going to go through that in full detail. However, you can see, certainly compared to the other classes, it's very noticeable how Scorching Arrows does pretty much all the damage output. Well, I say pretty much all. It's like half of it. Roughly half of the damage per second is dealt by Scorching Arrows. The other skill runes, like they all combine together to deal as much as it. And then of course, the range damage bonus from Sniper and from Mark of Death, they help out loads. That's where you get all your damage from. Now, Empowered Rapid Fire here, this was how much damage it would add over the course of the duration. This is actually on Silver Raid. Let's go down to Platinum Raid. So the damage over the course of the duration, and that's how much per use. And then the damage per second I'm dealing with the basic attacks is 10.5 million. So it's roughly half that, what I do in a second. Now the reason why I can use it at the end is because that damage per second is kind of dealt over the few seconds. So like when you're attacking, you're adding damage over time, and that full 10.5 is dealt over a few seconds. So right at the end, you can suddenly use this, and you can get a lot of damage off, more than you would from doing basic attacks at that point. However, during the rest of it, because it takes more than a half a second to use, it's not going to actually add to your DPS. And that's even with it at 99 out of 99. So, Empowered Rapid Fire just isn't going to be that helpful. Infinite Combustion's even less, so it will reduce your damage your damage per second if you use it. Now, finally, I'm going to go into how much damage. So I didn't look at Silver Raid, how much damage you do there, but this is in Gold Raid, how much I'd expect you to be able to do. So as you can see, this is with basically extra fire, and I've put plus 100%. So this is how much each 100% fire adds on to your overall damage output. Basically, elemental stats are what affect your damage output in Raid, because your damage is capped, and the other stats, once you hit the limit, you can't increase it anymore. It's basically all down to elemental stats. So here you can see the kind of damage output you would do with the different stats. And then on Platinum Raid, here we have it again. So as you can see, I think I did I did nearly 1.3 billion. I'm 412% fire, so this fits perfectly with what I was saying. That's how much damage output you can do at those stages if you do it in the way I tried out. I'm pretty sure this is the best way to do it. I've tried all kinds of combinations, and basically doing just basic attacks, using the buffs in this way, this is how you get the best damage output. So that's everything that I wanted to go through in this video. I tried to be as brief as possible and to go through everything. I hope I stayed long enough on each of these bits that you can look through if you want to see them. And that is it from me. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.